So next up, we are going to get started with our panel discussion. I just really quickly want to introduce our panelists. We have Kristy Stonehill, and we have Nicole Gillen. We also have Stephanie Carbaugh and Linda Mimms. And if you turn to your agenda and your pamphlet for this weekend, if you would like to learn more about our panelists, their bios are on the second page. All right. So to get us kicked off, I would like to pose this to all of you. Any of you are welcome to answer. What led you to become involved in the CURESZ mentoring program? Guess Linda, would you like to start?
Can you hear me? Okay, it's working. Well, when Bethany told me the mission and goal of the program, I couldn't say no because helping other mothers through this really rocky journey when their child, adult child in particular, has been diagnosed with schizophrenia is quite a task. Speaking from personal experience. So all I had to do was think about what happened to us, our family, and our child when we didn't know what was happening to them, why they were exhibiting behaviors that were foreign to us. And when we finally got a diagnosis, it didn't really make it much better to try to get medically necessary timely treatment for our child. And that was kind of like a real blow and to me because I'd always taken my children from the time they were born to the doctor for their immunizations when they got sick, when they got hurt. And then all of a sudden, I'm told because my adult child is over 18, I can basically do nothing to force them to get care. And this is in the face of a lot of odds, including the major odd in our situation, which was anosognosia. And most of the doctors that I interfaced with and clinicians didn't even know what that was and that it was a symptom of schizophrenia. So I discovered that I couldn't share this with friends because they didn't really understand about this kind of illness. And I just felt like I couldn't do much of anything, even given my background in public policy, which really equipped me to do a lot of things that most parents probably wouldn't know to do. So I'm a big believer that sometimes a picture can speak more eloquently than words. This is how I was feeling, that I was in an unknown, scary ocean where I did not know how to get back to the shore, completely alone and isolated. And I don't want anyone else to feel that way. I think that it's one of the worst feelings I've ever had, and I'm speaking too for my family. So I was drowning, and my child was drowning with me, and my family was drowning, and we could not find any lifeline. So the bottom line here is that I would have given anything to have a mentor call me, somebody that had gone on this journey and I could speak with honestly. I could cry, I could scream, I could share my feelings, and they would give me a life preserver to cling to. That is something that I really wish we had had as a family. So just to have somebody that understands and will listen is so important, and it would have helped us so much. And that's why I signed up for the mentors program, so I could hopefully provide that hope, that preserver for other moms and families that are going through this.
I think Linda just basically gave the whole presentation for us for that. I don't really know what more we could add because she hit pretty much all points. I will say that when my journey started, it was very bleak. And finding a peer and a mentor myself to relate to was absolutely extraordinary for me. It absolutely pulled me out of the trenches, and I said, okay, I can maybe do this. And so, that is why I do what I do for this foundation. both. Um, the next question is, what has been the most meaningful part of the experience for you? Nicole, do you want to answer that one?
I was going to point to Stephanie. All right. So I think on some level, kind of rephrase what they both just said. It's about being an emotional port in the storm. It's like the thing that kept coming back in my head because, when I started out, you go to support groups, right? And you're one of 10, 15, 20 people, and you get all of 3 minutes to talk about what's going on. It's woefully insufficient. Some people take all the oxygen out of the room because they speak for 15 minutes, and all of a sudden you're down to 2 minutes. And it's spotty in terms of the support you might get or the information people might have or anything. And so, I started as a mentee in this program and then flipped to become a mentor because I saw the value of that relationship. I saw the value of just having someone I could talk to who got it, who may not have the answers, but they understood the isolation, they understood the complexity, they understood the storm that I was weathering on my own. And that's why I moved into this program.
Like Nicole, I was also a mentee first, and it was huge. I just remember I was so nervous to have that first phone call, and yet it was someone on the other side of the phone that you knew automatically that they understood what you were feeling. Our shoes weren't identical, but I knew that they understood. They listened. They gave ideas of what has worked for them and pointed me in the right direction. And they became a fast friend. So I wanted to be a mentor and do that for others. So I think the biggest part is the listening part is that you're just there to listen because when you're in those shoes, you don't know who to go to, who to talk with, and it can just feel very lonely.
Thank you both. Um, I know you've answered this probably to some extent already, but what do you think families who are new to schizophrenia need most from a mentor? Any additional insights there?
I think we hear a lot with LEAP for our loved ones, but I think it's LEAP for all of us that listening, empathizing, agreeing, and partnering. That I think is what just jumped out at me at first when I heard that question.
I feel like too, a safe space for people to just say the things that I feel like a lot of times as family members who are caring for someone with serious mental illness don't feel like they can say to anyone. There are just things that when you're in the trenches, you just feel like there is no one you can really say that out loud to. And a lot of times when you have a peer or a mentor who has walked in similar shoes or journeys, and you realize, okay, I can relate to this person. They kind of understand what I'm saying. I've had several mentees within this organization that have said to me, you didn't react when I just said that. And I'm like, well, no, because I get it. I know exactly what you're saying. And that is so much for them, I feel like, because I tell everyone there's no magic wand. There's nothing I'm going to be able to tell you in this conversation that is going to solve anything or is going to enable this big epiphany. But what I can do is listen. And, this is a safe place to be able to say those things that you really need to get off your chest. What do you think makes the peer to peer support unique from other interventions?
I would say that it offers something that no other intervention can offer, and that is personal connection with somebody who has gone through this experience before. And so the lived experience, the true empathy, and the human touch are things that other people and groups cannot give to an individual who is going through this. So it gives permission to let that individual talk and share feelings and just frustration and anything they feel like saying, without any judgment, with just a good ear and empathy. So one thing I would say is that you can provide for them symptoms and etiology of schizophrenia. You can give them a lot of things to equip them to handle the situation better. And also, how to find a good care team is very important. And that's not really medical advice, it's just practical advice, because we tend to stay away from medical advice. But the bottom line, the number one thing that a mentor can provide is a glimmering of hope in a sea of uncertainty. And I truly believe that, because there is hope that their person can improve, and there is hope that the mentor will get through, the mentee will get through this dark and stormy time, and ensure assurance that it is not their fault, because any moms in the audience know moms are going to blame themselves for anything that goes on with their children, even if cognitively they know it's not their fault. Doesn't matter. So to tell another mother, it is not your fault. This happened. It is not your fault. I think is extremely important.
Thank you, Linda. That's a really good segue to the next question, which is how do you help families find hope while also being realistic about the challenges they face?
Well, I think for me, when my journey first started as a family member, it was, everything was so gloom. And I tend to be a person that's cup is half full. And so it felt like everything was just pouring down. And it was essentially, I was given it, this was like a death sentence. It's going to be over. Everything you knew as life is done. And, we're done with all of this. And I just thought this just can't be. And so what I started realizing is I had to find ways to navigate what we were going through in a more positive way. And I think that when you put the focus back on yourself as a family member and you start saying, how do I juggle what I'm doing as a caretaker, but also not forget to remember me? It also provides hope and it also is empowering to move forward together in the journey.
Kristy, would anyone else like to comment on that? Okay, we will move on to the next question. How do you balance supporting others while also caring for yourself and your family members? Nicole, would you like to share some insights with us?
Yeah, I was looking at my notes. So it took me a few years to understand how to care for myself. I spent so much time focused on my kiddo. I still do. And my family. And when it came to me, I was just like, God, I hope I can sleep tonight. And that was self-care, right? Is it possible I can, number one, be in bed at a decent hour and then actually make it through the night? Potentially. And then I got myself an amazing therapist. And that became my first real step in self-care. And my therapist was amazing at helping me understand what was happening to my daughter, giving me a language, giving me an understanding of the terminology of what psychiatrists are thinking when they're talking to her and me, and started to just empower me in the way that nobody else was. So that was my first real step. And then I turned to probably less productive methods of self-care, which we won't talk about. And then I found fitness, right? Right? And then I found fitness and I started teaching at the gym, and now I'm a personal trainer, and that endorphin rush was so important to keeping me level and just whatever, keeping my own personal sanity. But honestly, first, it was just sleep.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I wish I did better job at that. But it's a question. It's an ongoing question for me. For me, helping others is very energizing. So, helping my daughter or helping someone that's calling, that's great. But all of a sudden it adds up and I know I'm in trouble. And I have to remember that thing where they always say, oxygen. You put yours on first, and then you put the other person's on. So I endeavor to, like Nicole, I have a very good therapist that I can talk with, but I also just endeavor to put, what's going on in our family first, and then fill in the pieces with the other things. And it's amazing how that does happen. You think like you have no time in the world, but you really do, especially when you can get that oxygen placed where it's supposed to be.
Thank you. What gives you hope today for your loved one, your mentees and their families, for the future of schizophrenia care and recovery?
Talking about it like we are right now, right? It's empowering. I remember when my journey first started, I wanted to shut the blinds and hide. And I was like, no one can find this out. I can't believe this is happening. I don't know what to do. And then you're going through a whole grieving process of everything. And then I was like, wait, there has to be more of us out there. And then the more I figured out that there were more of us out there, the more I realized that the more we stay silent, the more this just keeps continuing like we're doing. So I always try to encourage people. You may not be a speaker, you may not be an advocate, but don't stop talking about it. Talk about it out loud. A lot of people are dealing with serious mental illness. There are a lot of us out there. And I think it's the most empowering thing we can do in this community.
Oh my gosh. It's the exact same thing I wrote. And wherever I am, I'm in the back of a taxi. What are you doing in Cincinnati? I'm here for a conference on schizophrenia. Oh, my brother has schizophrenia, right? Like wherever I am, I talk about it. And all of a sudden you can see someone like relax. Oh, it's okay to talk about it. This is the most powerful thing we can do in every room with every person we know, whether it's someone we know personally or not, to just talk about it, to normalize it, to talk strongly and loudly with purpose and conviction and hope and love, and not to be shy and not to crawl in ourselves, which is what we all do when this first happens. But the more groups like this gather, I don't know. I feel like we're getting louder, or maybe I'm just getting louder. I don't know. But this is the most important thing.
What do you wish friends, extended family, employers, and the community better understood about schizophrenia?
I wish that they knew that schizophrenia is a no-fault, treatable, biological, neurological brain disease, an organ-based illness, not mental, not behavioral. Those words are terrible. They do not describe the disease, and certainly not the meaning of the word schizophrenia, which means split mind and should be eradicated from our language. In Japan, when they changed the name to integration disorder, more people came for treatment because the discrimination and stigma was not as strong as with a word that does not describe the disease. And I think that we need to do something about that. And since there's so many doctors in the room, I'm on my soapbox. I'm begging you to get that name changed. It could make a huge difference to our group of people who don't deserve to have the wrong perceptions about their illness being spread around our culture. And you know what? How you use words defines your culture. It can define your culture, and it can change perceptions that are inaccurate about illnesses and everything else. So people with this illness, living with this illness, they do not deserve to be viewed by others and even by themselves as something that they are not. So we need to do this for these folks because they deserve no less.
Thank you, Linda. That was very well put. Um, for anyone to respond, what does recovery mean to you now, and how has that changed over time?
So personally, I hate that word. Davey knows I hate that word. So here's the thing. In other illnesses, autism, I can't think of some of the other ones though, they don't call it recovery. They call it managed. Why do we have to, quote, recover? Why do our loved ones have to recover? Why can't they get to a point of managed? Why can't we have a similar language that's in many instances achievable, right? Recovery is, I feel like it's this like gray cloud in the sky or pink cloud that you can't quite pin down. When is recovery achieved? And I know there's like some nebulous definitions out there for it, but it's obviously a very personal thing. And I just feel like it's setting a bar that maybe somebody might feel like, well, I don't know if I reached that, so maybe I've not recovered. But maybe they're working and they like their job and they've got friends and they're doing things and this and that. But maybe they don't feel like they've, quote, recovered. So I don't know. I would love a different word. I would love a word that allows for a lot more latitude and allows for people to feel like they're in it. I'm managing it. I'm living a life that makes me feel fulfilled, even if I haven't, quote, recovered. Because what if they're still hearing voices? What if they still have delusions, but yet they're living otherwise a productive life? Does that mean they're not recovered? So, anyways, my 2 cents.
I view recovery as being able to live your best life in stability, whatever that looks like. If your best life is not full recovery, like Bethany, then maybe it is a partial recovery. And I do agree with Nicole that recovery could be actually a different word. But if we're still going to use living in recovery, then we should view that as whatever the person can achieve given their unique circumstance. And I would never want anybody living with schizophrenia to feel that they could not reach out and get recovery, whatever that would mean, if it means absolutely 100% back to who they were, because it is a chronic illness and that's just not going to happen and it's not realistic. So think of something that we could use, and we will start using it when we write our editorials and our papers and everything else, because we do not want to hurt our population by making them feel they cannot achieve something that's out of their reach.
Thank you. A couple questions left, and then I think we'll transition to an opportunity for Q&A. What are some misconceptions or fears that families bring to the mentoring relationship?
That their child will never be able to live a decent life. That's number one. And also that their family will be broken apart for all time, basically, because we haven't even discussed siblings. And that's a whole other area because it's a family disease. It affects the entire family and it can have devastating results to siblings.
Also, I know just recently someone was really concerned that they had done something with their child, for their child, or something transpired that it was their fault. And I know that's been commented up here before that it is not your fault. Yes, there's things that play into it that you do over in a heartbeat. And maybe that did play into it. But in all, there's nothing you've done to have them have this illness. So I think that that's been one recently that different ones have been voicing to me is it's just the fear of what they've done and they just feel so bad. And another thing that plays into it is extended family or someone else that is in their life that is coming down hard on them or that they just don't understand at all. And so the mentoring program is really helpful, I feel, to just be able to voice those questions and have somebody that's been walking their shoes a little bit longer say no or yes or get it, all those sort of things.
Know if everybody in this audience has read Bob Kolker's book, but I mean, years ago, mothers were blamed and called schizophrenic mothers. They were blamed for their children's illnesses, and it was a pretty devastating. And so we're still carrying some of that, as you just said, some of that philosophy that we've caused it. I mean, you even read articles about, if you didn't do this in pregnancy, if you didn't do that. I mean, that's just terrible to put that kind of burden on the mother. So I really think that with education, we can get rid of that old thought. But Bob Kolker does a very good job in that book. I highly recommend it, of going through the scientific advancements and also what happened to that family that had six sons that lived with schizophrenia.
Sure, I'll go one more time. So in terms of misconceptions that families can bring to the mentoring relationship, I had a couple. So let's talk about fears. My fears as a mentor. Fear of not having the answer, right? Somebody's desperate for an answer, and I likely don't have it. Saying the wrong thing. I'm really good at that. Or not being available when my mentee needs me. This is such a complicated, often suddenly emotional, suddenly difficult place that we live in, that I think we're all terrified of leading our mentee down the wrong path. At least I am. For misconceptions in this relationship, it's that we can fix anything, right? The main thing we can do is listen, right? Sometimes offer direction or thoughts. I won't call it advice because I think that's too big a word. But if we can make the burden a little less, then I think we've succeeded.
I just wanted to say too that being a mentor is not an easy thing, as Nicole was just saying, but also the fact that you are reliving what happened to you with your child. It can be extremely emotional for the mentor, and you have to do a lot of self-care. I mean, I had a person on the line. I also do mentoring with my own consulting business in my county. I had a person on the line, and when I got off, I cried. And I do not cry that often, but it touched me so much because we all have PTSD, as my friend says. We all have it, and it's always just lying under just a thin layer of, a thin layer of, I don't know what you would call it, being a staunch person or being a person who can suck it up. But when you talk to another mom and they're sobbing and they're going through the same thing you did, and 9 times out of 10, you do not have a solution for that. Because as much as you fight to get your children into effective health care for their disease, you may not be successful. And we've all had that happen in this arena. So it's very important for families to also practice self-care because, again, I think you were the one that said if you don't put your oxygen mask on first, you're not going to be able to be an effective advocate for your kid.
So last question from me, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. How has serving as a mentor impacted your own life?
I think for me, if you would have asked me 6 years ago if I would ever be up here on the stage, I would have said, you're absolutely out of your mind. Okay, so it definitely has, because of my daughter's situation and my decision to say, I can't be quiet about this, I have to speak about this. and my passion for this entire cause, it's definitely transformed me in that way. And each time I have a mentee on the phone, our conversation ends, and it doesn't matter how many times I do this. At the end, I think, I always say, I know I didn't really help you much. And they always say back, no, you have no idea how much you've helped me in this conversation. And, for me, if I can do that for them, because I was once alone and I remember how isolated and alone I felt when I started. And so for me, sorry, I'm going to choke up. For me, if it's just one person that doesn't have to feel that isolation, they don't have to feel that stigma of this entire situation, then it's worth it.
So, Kristy, that was really nicely put. Would anyone else like to comment on that last question? How has serving as a mentor impacted your own life?
I will say that it gives some meaning to the suffering that we have suffered in our family. I mean, it gives meaning because we're helping somebody else through it. And so therefore I can say, well, I suffered through all these things with my child and my family, but I can bring something to help another person who's just at the start of this journey.
Thank you all so much. And if you could please join me in thanking our panelists for their wonderful insight. We will now start a Q&A session. And so I think we will have Bethany or someone from the audience being able to pass around a microphone. So if you have a question that you would like to pose to our lovely panelists, if you could please just raise your hand and we will pass a mic to you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Thank you for your courage, your commitment, all that you clearly do to help not only your loved ones, but also other family members who are helping their loved ones. It's inspiring to hear about the work that you do, inspiring to hear about the CURESZ Foundation facilitates that work. So I'm very impressed and grateful that people like you are in the world to help people who, like me, live with serious mental health conditions. And clearly, you're helping many of these family members directly through the work that you do. That's amazing. Have you heard from these family members how your guidance has helped them help their loved ones, how the loved ones be happier, be able to engage with their communities better? Can you share a little more about that, please?
I had one lady whose mother had schizophrenia, and she had been on a number of antipsychotics, had actually, if I'm not mistaken, she might have been in jail, but was out and was just struggling on every front and was desperate to get her on clozapine and was getting pushback, as we all get pushback and trying to get our loved ones on clozapine. So I had inside baseball, right? Okay, here's how you say the doctor, and we strategized together, and we built a plan. And we had probably half a dozen calls on this one topic, and then she was able to get her mom on clozapine. It was everything from, okay, well, they had her on an LAI, and she'll do the LAI, but I'm worried about having her take the pill every day, right? And so how do we do that? So we strategized on that. And so it was not just strategizing in terms of talking to the doctor, it was strategizing in terms of how to talk to her mom and how to get her mom to buy in on this. So it was a little bit of LEAP method, like you talked about, Stephanie. It was a whole mishmash of stuff to try and put this plan together, but it happened. And I haven't spoken to her in probably a year. So I'm assuming, knocking on wood here, that things are going well. But it was that, and that when she started to get her on, started to titrate her up, she was seeing early progress and she was thrilled.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really encouraging to hear. And as you indicate, no news is probably good news. I hope so. Fingers crossed. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Brandon Steigel. I'm with One Mind, but thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes. I had a woman that I worked with for 2 years, and her son was isolating in his room. She couldn't get him to come out. He eventually, though, we talked through some strategies on what we could do to help him. And I won't go through all the details of it, but today he's back in college. He's doing really, really well, and his family is happy. And so that made me very, very happy.
Oh, yes. I was wondering, what advice would you give siblings of people with schizophrenia?
I would educate the siblings first and foremost because there's so much misunderstanding. And to this day, we have one of our children who still does not really get it. And it's heartbreaking. So sometimes it can work. Sometimes the personal feelings are so mixed up with the disease that it's very hard to extricate them. So all we can do is give love to each of the children, try to explain what's going on with their sibling, and give support to them. And they have to come into understanding themselves, because that's another place where parents blame themselves. You know, why can't I get this child to accept our sick child? He's sick. Can't they see that? It's not his choice. Sometimes it just takes a while.
And I'll add to that. Unfortunately, for many siblings, they end up being the caregiver, partner, etc. when they're older and the parents are no longer around. And to Linda's point, they have to get to the point of accepting this situation. Obviously, NAMI, I think has a table back there. They've got the family to family program, which I'm a NAMI facilitator, and so I've had many siblings in my classes. And it's eye-opening. It's a safe place where mom and dad aren't talking about it, right? It's some lady standing at the front of the room reading off the NAMI script, but whatever, right? It's information in a non-threatening, eye-opening way. So something like that could be a great resource. Because as I said, eventually they may end up being in that position. And so the sooner they understand it and come to accept it, then hopefully life is easier for them too.
I'm Mary Beth DeBoard, and I want to thank you. You are extraordinary. When this happened to me, I felt exactly like all of you said you felt. And I was just like Alice in Wonderland is the only thing I could compare it to. And I hadn't even read that book, but I could identify with being in an otherworldly place and going through all of the guilt, like, what did I do wrong? And why is this happening? And of course, there's no answers, right? There's some things you learn as you move through it. But it's such a shock. And I remember knowing in my heart that this too shall pass and we'll find a way through. But I had no idea how to do it. And I found the Yizers through a friend. When my son got sick, I had 5 girlfriends that I knew I could go to. And I had always been the person that people would go to. And now I was at home. I couldn't work anymore. My family was a mess. And this one friend who subsequently told me that her aunt had schizophrenia, but that had never come out before, was listening to Sirius MD, and she heard Bethany and her mother, Karen, talking about their books. And I was going to lunch with her at Nordstrom's in the Chicagoland area where I then lived. And she said, "Oh, I just have to tell you about this." And I go, "Give me the names of those books and I got to go." And I ordered them on Amazon and I spent the next week reading them. And somehow I found Bethany. I don't know if she had contact information in the back of her book or what happened. And then Karen and Bethany and my son and I met in Indianapolis and had a 3-hour lunch. And we figured out that somehow between me going from Chicago and then coming from Cincinnati, we could meet in Indy. And Karen was so great. Bethany, of course, was great, but Karen was great for me because for the first time, and I went to a therapist too, but she didn't have experience with a brain disorder. And so she's lovely and she helped me. And there were times I remember when I said, I don't understand this. And she's like, it's organic. I'd be like, I don't know what that means because I'm not from a science background. And so I came to absorb that information, but it was very difficult for me to understand some of the terminology. But be that as it may, I remembered how great Karen was to me. She was the first mentor. I don't know if she's in this room, but she deserves a lot of praise. And her husband as well was extraordinary. And I kept thinking, this is what we need. We need this because my friends would talk to me, but they didn't really know how to talk to me. And some of them were extremely supportive, but still they didn't really know how to, they hadn't gone through the same experience. And that'd be the same if my child had, cancer or some other very difficult illness. And I remember talking to my son's then doctor at the time, and he brushed me off. And he said, it's never going to work. And I just don't ever really take no for an answer. And so I thought, why wouldn't that work? Why can't this work? And one thing led to another. My son was actually misdiagnosed. He has bipolar disorder and severe OCD. And so it's a tricky thing. So, I don't harbor any bad feelings about that. But the only reason he was accurately diagnosed was because of the Eisers, because they introduced us to Dr. Nasrallah. And I remember during COVID, everything was shut down. Our business was deemed non-essential. And that was another very difficult time. And I was sitting there and going, we could start this now. And that's how all of you are here. It's just, I'm sitting here and I'm pinching myself. I'm like, I cannot believe that this has happened. And Catherine, thank goodness you came along because Bethany, I would talk to Bethany and I'd be like, okay, I'm swimming in deep water here. I don't know the language. I can't be a mental health advocate without a degree. So thank you so much. And I just think you're all amazing. And the fact that you're still mentoring people is extraordinary. I've had to back away for personal reasons because, as you correctly say, the family members are never the same. And so I'm still dealing with that personally. And I just can't be a mentor right now because of all of that. But it's just wonderful what you're doing. And I can tell you're on the other side of it and you're so much healthier. So thank you.
Hi. So I can relate to so much of what all of you have said. But my question is about, do you very often get men that are willing to be mentors for other men, fathers, dads? I think, that's a need. I know in my situation, I not only, had to take care of our son and elderly parents and try to work full time and all that. I literally had to take care of my husband too and teach him everything I was learning. He was just paralyzed. And I think if he would have had other, like a male group, that could have been helpful. So I'm just wondering how often that arises.
I can speak to that a little bit. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yes, to answer that question, we do have some male mentors in the program, which we're very fortunate to have a wide range of individuals, men, women, folks across the United States. I think even internationally now, which that has also been, I think, a wonderful reach because it also allows there to be some thoughtfulness put into the matching of mentors and mentees, which we didn't really touch on a whole lot, but that is part of the effort. And Bethany does a lot of work with that, but to try to ensure that whether it's geographically and, folks might align or even be able to meet in person, which I know some of our mentors and mentees have had the opportunity to do, or if there's, special, circumstances, age ranges too. Sometimes we'll look at those types of characteristics as well.
I just want to redeem myself here, but I will say that it is, I think, in many ways harder on the dads because the dads tend to keep things in more, and the dads are the fixers in the family. Usually, well, I mean, I'm speaking in generalities, but usually the moms are the major caregivers and the dads are the fixers, and they want to fix it. And it's so frustrating for them because they can't. And they definitely need mentors.
Hi, I'm Pauline. I didn't want to put a damper on everything. So I didn't want to be last, but now I am. Uh, for the families that are using clozapine, it's working great. Now we have some metabolic issues. People are having high cholesterol. They're putting on weight. What do you say to them, or they want to give up? Have you met any of those folks that they see a change, but when they start seeing the weight and and all these other things?
We tell them to talk to their doctor because we're not supposed to give medical advice since we aren't MDs. So I'm sure that's not very satisfying, but we're not doctors, so we don't go there.
Yes, and my improv experience. In that, talk to your doctor conversation, there are seeds we can plant. So, for example, many psychiatrists are like, oh, all those side effects, talk to your general practitioner, right? They can prescribe for that. So there's ways we can sort of say, here's some things that they can do to help. We don't know the exact medications or anything else. We're not doctors. We don't know why they have high cholesterol, but that same person that's prescribing clozapine could also deal with these other things. So there's ways we can give them a thought process and a path of dialogue, even if it's not specific recommendations.
And can I just say one more thing about this program in general? One of the things that I always think about in my own situation is that when I brought my daughter home as a newborn baby, I was never one of those moms that was like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't have a book. I wasn't lost. And I just naturally wasn't. I just went right into my role. When I brought her home from her first hospitalization, I was so lost. And I was like, well, what do you mean take her home and do what? What am I supposed to do with any of this? And there was no one really in the clinical world that was like, here's a paper or here's a pamphlet about a mentorship program that maybe you can connect with other people to help you out. And I would just say to the clinicians in this room, the biggest advantage I think you can do for family members, because I understand HIPAA, I understand all of that stuff. Hand them a flyer about this mentorship program or about a peer program if it's not in your area that just says, hey, here's a way for you to learn more about how you can connect with others that have been on similar journeys. And I would just like to say that I think that is the biggest hope that the clinical community can give to family members.
And I'm going to add one other thing to what Kristy just said. And Bethany's going to talk a lot more about this, but you are all handed a day zero page. And this is something, it's a big program. I'm not going to steal the thunder, but this ties into what Kristy just said. It's going to be an important thing. Homework assignment. Everyone's going to have to remember it. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. You all are amazing. And sorry, I'm being flagged.
Hi, I'm Deanna Kelly from the University of Maryland. Thank you all so much for your courage. This was a wonderful evening hearing from all of you. I just want to address, Linda, you mentioned earlier about the terminology of schizophrenia and how stigmatizing that can be. We are moving into the era where they're going to be looking at the DSM-6. They're starting those conversations. And this spring at the Schizophrenia International Research Society meeting, it was a large discussion led by Stefan Leutsch out of Germany. But the researchers who were there discussed it in a forum that was sort of split 50-50, but it's a time when people are talking about it. So I would encourage you or encourage those who have opinions around that as family members and advocates to maybe get around that and voice your opinion, because I think it's the time where your opinion can count on how that will turn out or what might change around that as a global impact. So I just encourage you to think about that and get connected, and we can help do that, but get connected to those who are having those conversations and where those conversations are coming. So
Deanna, that's awesome. Where would we voice it? Where do we go?
So I think we could start by bringing letters and up to Stefan Leutsch, who started this. I think the APA is starting these discussions. Rob Cotes, who's in the audience, might have something to say. I don't know, but I don't know where they're at. But I think we would engage APA. We would engage some of those leaders, and I could help get those connected. I don't know the answer, but I think we could figure that out. But I think it's the time to start those conversations more than just in the research community.
Deanna, if you get those names to us, we're in different, like I represent NSSC. We're in different organizations that will get on the advocacy immediately. So if you could get those names or the connections out to us, please do. We have a great advocacy network across the country.
I just want to add a little bit to that because I was part of that survey. There were several hundred people, probably Rob was, as well as a few other people in this room. And, we really are exploring this. And there will be a paper coming out in probably 2027, it looks like. So there definitely is movement along these lines. And I am a doctor, so there is a lot of information if you look. So I thought I would just make that comment. There are very good ways of managing clozapine. I'm just couldn't help myself since the mic was next to me. And I will give you some of that information. And to address Linda with recovery, I use that term quite a bit, but I try to define it differently. I talk about a life of purpose and meaning. And that's, I think, if you guys can get to that stage, that's what it's all about. It's not getting rid of all of the symptoms. That's not recovery. I mean, God bless you, Bethany. I mean, but not everyone gets to the stage where they're no longer hearing voices. It's dealing with it and learning to live with it, but having that purpose and meaning. That's as a clinician, that's what we should all be about.
Just another question for you on the name change information. So if are they collecting information from Japan and the other Asian countries that have changed the name to show before and after the number of people who have come in for treatment and the results?
I do think that information is being gathered, but I don't have all the answers, Linda, on exactly where it's at. But I can connect to Stefan and ask him right away, and then we could try to figure out and go from there. But I just wanted to bring it up that these things are happening, and it's the time.
I'm grateful that you did bring it up because it is way past time. way, way past time. You know, in the scientific community, things are always precise, or at least they strive to be precise. And here we have a word that is not precise and that is giving misconceptions of our community. And it's just, you can tell I'm very passionate about it and I don't like it one bit, and I will fight to change it.
All right. Oh, okay. One more, and then I think we'll. There's one other here. Is that okay, Bethany, to take two more? Okay.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Linda, could we get a copy of what you read about the name change? Lydia Robert, sorry, I have a son that has schizophrenia, and he is in recovery for the last 4 years, and I'm so grateful. But I am very interested in the name change. And can we not do something like sign a petition while we're all here together that could go to whomever will figure out it needs to go to?
Actually, that's a fantastic idea.
Okay.
Yeah, there's power in numbers. And as far as the actual data, and I've just read several articles about it, but I don't have anything at the top of my mind. But if you Google it, information will come up. And there's also a doctor in at Johns Hopkins who is of Japanese descent. And again, I can't remember. Yes, yes. And he knows all about this. And we brought this up at the meeting recently that Johns Hopkins held. And I'm sure he would be a tremendous resource.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Angela Brisbane. My son, Michael, is featured as one of the survivors on the CURESZ website. And I just wanted to address the question that I think you had about what to do if your mentee has a question about like medicine. So I'm going to school to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and I am one of the mentors through CURESZ. I've been too busy recently to really have any mentees, but I think that you'd have to address it kind of like if you were a NAMI family support group leader. You have for me, whenever I used to be a facilitator, and I also am the administrator for Team Daniel and the clozapine community on Facebook. So for me, it can maybe be a little difficult because I do know the answer to a lot of those medication questions. But knowing that you can't give medical advice because you're not, their medical provider, you have to point them towards resources. There's lots of resources out there. All the doctors that are speaking here this weekend, they have numerous published medical articles that you could look up and refer them to. If it's about clozapine, there's a clozapine handbook. There's Dr. Laitman's book, Meaningful Recovery. So there's a lot of resources, and you could just make yourself a list. And instead of pointedly answering a question, you could say, well, let me point you to this resource. I know that the CURESZ Foundation has Saturdays with physicians, or they used to, where you can sign up. So I think maybe making a resource list to point your mentee towards is really helpful. That's what I used to do when I was a NAMI facilitator. I just had a big resource list so that whenever they had a question about something that I knew would come up, I would just give them that. And I think that that's, for me, that's like the best way that, like when I have a mentee, instead of trying to offer personal medical advice when I'm not their clinician, that I can just point them to the reference that I know is going to give them accurate information and be helpful. So.
Thank you so much, Angela. That's a great perspective. And on that note, I will just say, let's give another round of applause to our wonderful panelists. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience as well.